You're listening to the Quint's podcast.
सर्दी खांसी ना malaria hua.
Yep, that's how prevalent malaria has been for it to be able to make it to a Bollywood song. But we finally have a breakthrough to prevent this infectious parasitic disease that has caused lakhs and lakhs of deaths worldwide year after year. On 6th October, the World Health Organization recommended the world's first malaria vaccine, Mosquirix, that has been developed by British pharmaceutical GlaxoSmithKline in 1987 for malaria prevention in children living in regions with moderate to high transmission of this disease. Children under 5, it has been found out, are the most susceptible to malaria. In fact, in 2019, they accounted for 67% of all malaria deaths worldwide. And the WHO's recommendation for administering Mosquirix to children is based on the data of an ongoing pilot program that has taken place in Ghana, Kenya and Malawi that has been able to provide more than 2.3 million doses to over 800,000 children since 2019. Now, the efficacy of the vaccine has been proven to be around 40%. So basically, it can prevent 4 out of 10 cases of malaria. And sure, that is not foolproof, but experts have a reason to believe that it's a remarkable success. The pilot drive found out that the vaccine is safe, it's cost-effective, it improves health and can save lives with good and equitable coverage that can be assured through routine immunization. And most importantly, this vaccine was found to be able to prevent 3 out of 10 cases of severe malaria. But how does Mosquirix work? Why did it take so long to develop this vaccine, and what will be the impact of this scientific development in developing countries in Africa and also India where malaria infections are prevalent? In this episode, we'll take all our questions on malaria and Mosquirix to Dr. Ambarish Datta, who's researched extensively on malaria and is also the Associate Professor of Epidemiology at the Indian Institute of Public Health in Bhubaneswar. You're tuned in to The Big Story, the podcast where we dissect the headline-making news for you. And I'm your host, Shorburi. It'll be fair to assume that most of us living in India are probably very well aware of malaria because that's how long this infection has been a part of our lives. It's found mention in ancient texts. It's been recorded in history for causing millions of deaths all over the world. But in a contemporary world, we don't hear much about malaria from developed countries. The hotspots are largely found in the humid, swampy Amazonian basin, some parts of the tropical Southeast Asian region as well. But of course, it's the sub-Saharan region that has a disproportionately high number of malaria infections. And although right now it's COVID-19 that is the talk of town, according to WHO data, in 2019, there were an estimated number of 229 million cases of malaria worldwide. And the estimated number of malaria deaths that year stood at over 400,000, a bulk of which were reported from African countries. Now, it's curable when arrested and diagnosed early on. There are also anti-malarial drugs that are used by travelers as preventives very frequently. Insecticides have also been used to suppress its contagion to an extent. But one of the primary reasons for why it hasn't been eradicated yet is because there is no silver bullet against it. As we know, malaria infections spread through bites of infected female Anopheles mosquitoes, and often they have proven to be resistant to insecticides. But perhaps one of the biggest challenges in fighting this ancient infection has been the parasite's ability to evolve in such a manner that a patient can only build up immunity over time through repeated infections. And even that might not be enough to ensure full immunity. Dr. Ambarish Datta tells us more about how malaria impacts the human body, why is it so hard to build an immunity against it, and why are children so susceptible to it?
Malaria is a disease which is caused by a parasite which is called Plasmodium, and it has got multiple species, of which the species Falciparum is most common in most parts of the world. And the Plasmodium parasite undergoes a complex life cycle in the mosquito as well as in the human being. It's quite a complex phenomenon. And the Plasmodium parasite enters into the blood cells of the red blood cells of the individuals, where it proliferates and breaks down the red blood cells, causing severe fever and other signs of inflammation, causes severe anemia and various other ailments in various organs of the body. It's very different from the commonly acquired viral or bacterial disease. I mean, it does not stimulate an immune response from the body when somebody acquires a plasmodium infection. You need a repeated infection and so repeated sufferings to get at least a semblance of immunity. And before that, one can succumb to it. Before acquiring that immunity, one can succumb to it. Children are more exposed to the vector, that is mosquito bites, and they are also susceptible to being exposed to the consequences of breakdown of the red blood cells in the body and severe malaria. So they suffer a lot, and many of them unfortunately die.
And considering these factors, that's exactly why the approval of the world's first vaccine against malaria is so deeply significant. While making the announcement, Dr. Tedros Adhanom, Director General of the World Health Organization, who had started his career as a malaria researcher, said it was a quote-unquote historic moment. Dr. Datta also believes that it's a big step towards bringing down malaria-induced mortality.
Malaria is quite a dreadful disease because of malaria in sub-Saharan Africa itself. Around 0.25 million people, 250,000 children die, and innumerable children and individuals suffer. So it's one of the most important causes of child death. So if that can be prevented to quite an extent by a vaccine, which would be administered to children, then it's kind of a game changer, isn't it?
But let's take a deeper look at the vaccine, what various studies say about it, and why it has received a green light. Firstly, according to the European Medicines Agency, Mosquirix, when given to children aged between 6 weeks to 17 months, has helped protect against malaria. It also helps protect against the infection of liver with the hepatitis B virus, but should not be used only for this purpose. Secondly, Azra Ghani, chair of infectious diseases at Imperial College London, said that she and her colleagues estimate that giving the malaria vaccine to children in Africa might result in a 30% reduction overall, with up to 8 million fewer cases and as many as 40,000 fewer deaths per year. Thirdly, data from the pilot program also showed that more than 2/3 of children in the 3 countries, Ghana, Kenya and Malawi, who are not sleeping under a bed net are benefiting from the vaccine. And lastly, in terms of side effects, well, there are rarely any serious side effects, but a fever that could result in temporary convulsions was one of them. You can read more about the various studies and data outcomes of Mosquirix and a detailed explainer on the same. The link to the story is on this episode's show notes as well as on Quint. Now, a couple of questions that might arise amongst those outside the scientific communities. Firstly, why is a vaccine with 40% efficacy being considered as remarkable? And secondly, this vaccine has been more than 30 years in the making. Why did it take so long when we have COVID vaccines being developed in about a year's time? Dr. Datta explains why.
It has only 40% efficacy, and it will work only against one malaria species, that is one plasmodium species, that is falciparum. And it's only would be administered to children. Now, given all these restrictions and constraints, I would consider it, and many others would consider this as a public health breakthrough. Because even with a 40% reduction in infection and 30% reduction in severe form of malaria, which can lead to death, and given the large size of large size of the sufferers, child sufferers of malaria, even a 40% or a 30% reduction would be humongous. But in the field, in the real life, real field situations, if it is found to be effective also, then I'm sure there would be more development, more work on improving the efficacy of these vaccines. And it's not far that we will really achieve a much higher efficacious vaccine.
Talking about the challenges of making the vaccine that works against parasites and why developing this took so much time, he explains that the immune responses to parasites are much slower than what it is for a virus, and that makes it doubly harder to nail a vaccine for malaria.
You see, virus triggers immune responses much instantly as compared to. So the vaccine for virus also triggers immune responses much more easily than what a vaccine for malaria would. So that is the difference. That is the main difference between these two. And of course, one cannot rule out the very reason that malaria largely affects the poorest section of the global population living in sub-Saharan Africa and certain other places like South Asia.
Yeah.
So of course, I mean the world, the developed world, was not too keen, was never had put their money and their efforts into developing a vaccine against such a disease which doesn't affect the developed world. I mean, we cannot shy away from that very fact.
In the context of comprehensive malaria control, the WHO recommended that the vaccine be injected in 4 doses to children from 5 months of age for reduction of malaria disease and burden. The first 3 shots will be given within 1 month of each other, and the 4th is recommended 18 months after the 3rd. And all this is especially a breakthrough for African countries like Tanzania, Burkina Faso, Nigeria, Congo, etc. that were home to 94% of malaria cases and deaths in 2019. Now, coming to India, we don't usually find too many reports on malaria infections in the country. Previously, the World Health Organization had also noted that the country had made a remarkable decline in malaria cases, but there are still enough cases to run up to millions. According to WHO, in 2019, India had an estimated 5.6 cases of malaria compared to about 20 million cases in 2020. So how big is this vaccine development for us in India?
Yeah, you don't hear about a lot of malaria in India, again, because it affects the most impoverished parts of India, the states like Jharkhand, Odisha, Chhattisgarh. The media has to share some of the blame for not reporting about malaria as they would for other diseases. You know, even like a disease like dengue, because it affects Delhi. And because malaria is confined to the most impoverished parts of the country, and also northeast part of India is also quite, I would say, there's a heavy burden of this disease. Yeah, in India, this vaccine, I mean, WHO is not proposed to use this vaccine in India because in India, the falciparum malaria is not the only malarial species that is prevalent. There are other species which are like vivax. Mainly vivax, other than falciparum, which is quite prevalent. So that is why this vaccine, and as I told you, this vaccine only works against falciparum malaria. So currently, there is no suggestion that it would be used in India.
As Dr. Datta pointed out, this new vaccine cannot provide immunity against all the existing types of malaria. It may not even be effective against the varieties prevalent in India. But if this is a start, can we expect a malaria-free future?
Of course we should. But at the same time, the ongoing anti-malaria activities should be carried out with the same intensity or with heightened intensity, which includes anti-vector measures like use of insecticide-treated bed nets and indoor residual spraying and early detection and complete treatment of malaria cases.
If you like listening to this episode, please subscribe to the Big Story playlist for episodic updates. We're live on Apple, Google Podcast, Spotify, JioSaavn, and most of the other popular podcast streaming platforms. For other podcasts, please log on to the Quint website and check out the podcast section. For any feedback, shoot an email to podcast@thequint.com.
Thanks for listening. Log on to the Quint's website and check out our other podcasts.